You've heard it on TV, not as analysis, not as a throwaway line, as a credential. A former player sits behind a desk, clean suit, perfect lighting, and says it like it ends the conversation. Michigan man. No explanation needed, no evidence required. Just the implication that something invisible, something inherited, settles every question before it's asked. You hear it during rivalry week, when the footage goes grainy and the music swells, when the broadcast stops talking about coverages and starts talking about standards, about values, about how Michigan is different. You hear it in press conferences too. A university president steps up to the microphone and uses the phrase the way institutions do when they want authority to sound moral. We're looking for a Michigan man, not the best coach, not the most qualified leader, not the person with the strongest judgment, a Michigan man. You hear it during coaching searches like a promise, like a reset button, like the failure wasn't structural, just a temporary deviation from the correct bloodline. And then you hear it again when the conversation shifts away from the field, when the subject becomes who runs the department, who makes the hires, who decides what matters and what doesn't. The phrase comes back, unchanged. The athletic director has to be a Michigan man, because at Michigan, this isn't just an identity, it's a verdict. A Michigan man is assumed to be right. Right in judgment, right in instinct, right in motive. If he decides something, the decision is trusted. If he misses something, it's dismissed. If he crosses a line, the line must have been unclear. The phrase does something dangerous. It doesn't describe behavior, it excuses it. Repeated often enough, Michigan man stops sounding like branding and starts functioning like doctrine. Not what did you do, but who are you? And if the culture of Michigan athletics is built around that idea, the culture of Moore, Ward, Berenson, and Moeller, then there's only one question worth asking. What is a Michigan man? Officially, no one ever says. There's no definition in a handbook, no code of conduct titled Michigan Man, no written standard you can point to and measure against reality. That's the point. A Michigan man isn't defined by what he does. He's defined by what people assume about him. He's presumed competent, presumed principled, presumed to be acting in good faith, even when the facts are unclear, especially when the facts are unclear. When a Michigan man makes a decision, it's called instinct. When he ignores a warning, it's called experience. When he's wrong, it's called complicated. The phrase doesn't describe behavior. It replaces scrutiny. Because if you're a Michigan man, the benefit of the doubt isn't temporary. It's permanent. You don't have to prove you're right. You just have to remind people who you are. When you strip away the speeches, what's left is a record, not of ideal, of outcomes. Bo Schembechler. Absolute authority, a culture where questioning leadership wasn't accountability, it was disloyalty. Dr. Anderson, decades, complaints, silence, a Michigan man at the center of it all, surrounded by other Michigan men, each deciding it wasn't their responsibility to intervene. Gary Moeller, a DUI, an arrest, a public incident that couldn't be spun away. The response wasn't reflection, it was containment. Red Berenson, public misconduct, private forgiveness, a reputation strong enough to outlast behavior. Basketball followed the same script. Ed Martin. Money flowing through the program. Players benefiting. Administrators insisting they didn't know until they did. Steve Fisher removed. Wins vacated. Banners taken down. The institution absorbed the damage, then closed ranks. And when the modern era arrives, the names change, but the pattern doesn't. Jim Harbaugh, infractions, investigations, an insistence that intent mattered more than rules. Sharon Moore, protection, promotion. a rapid collapse that exposed how little scrutiny existed before the fall. Different people, different decades, the same assumption every time. If he's a Michigan man, then he must have meant well. This is where the myth does its real work. Not at the top, at the edges. Because once leadership signals that being a Michigan man matters more than judgment, the message travels fast. Denard Robinson, a Michigan legend brought back into the building. Arrested for DUI after a single car crash, quietly removed. The story wasn't about why someone in charge of player development was making those decisions. It was about managing the optics of a name people loved. Matt Weiss, quarterback's coach, trusted inside the program, fired after being investigated for accessing student accounts without authorization. Not rivals, not opponents, students. Again, the response wasn't cultural introspection, it was procedural cleanup. Then the arrests start stacking. Jim Minnick, associate athletic director, DUI. Greg Scruggs, defensive line coach, hired. Arrested for OWI within weeks, gone. Denard Robinson wasn't alone. He was part of a cluster, different roles, different responsibilities, same outcome. And then there's the staff you never hear about. Connor Stalions didn't operate in a vacuum. He bought tickets, coordinated travel, ran surveillance across the conference. That doesn't happen unless someone believes the guardrails are soft. That belief didn't come from nowhere. It came from watching what happened to everyone else. What happens when a Michigan man gets arrested? What happens when a Michigan man crosses a line? What happens when the story fades? Not outrage, absorption. This is how culture expresses itself, not through slogans, through repetition. When lower-level staff keep getting in trouble in the same ways, under the same leadership, it stops being coincidence. It becomes inheritance. If the question is who allowed this, you don't start on the sideline. You start in the athletic director's office, because coaches operate inside a system. Staff learn from incentives, but athletic directors decide what gets confronted and what gets buried. 3 names define the modern failure. Don Canham, the architect, the man who built Michigan athletics into a self-sustaining empire, and in doing so, insulated it from oversight. Under Canham, Dr. Anderson wasn't removed. He was reassigned, demoted publicly, protected privately. Complaints were received, warnings were logged, and the decision was made, again and again, that protecting the brand mattered more than protecting athletes. Canham didn't just ignore a scandal, he normalized silence as governance. Dave Brandon, the corporate enforcer. Brand first, perception first, everything else negotiable. Under Brandon, the department didn't just mishandle crises. It treated criticism as hostility. When fans questioned leadership, they were mocked. When students raised concerns, they were dismissed. Only after national outrage did Brandon admit failure, quietly, at 1 a.m. Brandon didn't protect athletes. He protected narratives. And when the narrative collapsed, so did his tenure. Ward Manuel, the most dangerous of the 3, not because he was reckless, but because he was loyal. A Michigan man's Michigan man. Under Manuel, scandals didn't disappear. They multiplied. Mel Pearson, protected after an investigation documented abuse, retaliation, and lies. Connor Stalions, operating an illegal scouting network under Manuel's watch. Sharon Moore, promoted after deleting evidence, then arrested after his firing. Manuel didn't create the culture, he inherited it, and chose not to challenge it. Where Canham institutionalized silence and Brandon weaponized branding, Manuel normalized delay. Delay until leaks forced action. Delay until arrest made denial impossible. Delay until the damage was already done. So who's the worst? Canham built the system. Brandon exposed its arrogance. But Manuel proved the myth still mattered more than the mission, even after decades of evidence. That's not mismanagement, that's belief. And that belief is why accountability never reached the top, no matter how far it collapsed below. This is the part that makes none of it defensible. This isn't a fringe program. This isn't a struggling school cutting corners to stay relevant. This is one of the most elite public universities in the world. Its alumni include a president of the United States, the creator of Google. Its faculty shape public policy, science, medicine, and law. This is an institution that teaches ethics, that publishes codes of conduct, that prides itself on governance, transparency, and accountability. And yet, inside its athletic department, a different rule book keeps surfacing, one where judgment is assumed instead of tested, where loyalty matters more than oversight, where being one of us carries more weight than being right. The phrase Michigan man is supposed to represent excellence, but over time, it's come to represent exemption. Exemption from scrutiny, exemption from urgency, exemption from consequences that apply everywhere else. When misconduct happens, the instinct isn't correction, it's preservation. Preserve the legacy, preserve the lineage, preserve the myth. That's how you end up with a department where rules are enforced downward, not upward, where staff absorb risk created by leadership, where accountability stops just short of the people who set the culture. This isn't hypocrisy by accident, it's hypocrisy by design. Because once an institution convinces itself that its identity is inherently virtuous, rules stop being guardrails. They become suggestions. And the most damaging belief of all takes hold, that the right people don't need to be questioned, that the right people can't be wrong, that the rules are for thee, not for me. This is locker room ledger. If you care about how power actually works in sports, who gets protected, who gets sacrificed, and how myths outlive evidence, hit subscribe. And if this story resonated, watch our other investigations. Darrell Henley, the cornerback who became a drug kingpin, or the betting scandal that changed New York basketball forever. Because the most important stories in sports aren't about what happened on the field. They're about what institutions do when the truth threatens the brand.